Good morning and welcome to Paul T's World. In this video, we're going to have a look around my English garden in the third week of November. This week it has been about 15 degrees centigrade, but the winds have just turned northerly, and so it's about 10 degrees centigrade today. My garden is in Cheshire, right on the coast in the northwest of England. The zone is zone 8B 9A. The property is about 1/4 of an acre, including the house, and the soil is sandy. The whole house and property is set on a sandstone knoll. So the soil is quite shallow, very sandy, easy to work with, quite warm, but it won't hold moisture or nutrients. As it's sandy, it helps the plants in the winter as it doesn't hold the moisture. Many plants don't mind the cold but don't like to be wet and cold, and so a sandy soil does help in this respect. So I want to show you today how the plants are looking in November. Towards the end of the video, we'll go inside the house as there is a particular plant I want to show you. The lilac here, down by the gates, it's got all its buds ready for next year. The rambling rose here has some strong stems. I did cut this back a lot this year. Here's the new growth from this year, and it's on these stems that we'll have the flowers for next year. The rhododendron's doing well. It's got its buds all ready for next year. I made sure that the rhododendrons and the azaleas had plenty of water in August and September so that they could form their buds for next year. Here we have the candy tuft. I cut it right back. It's now bulked up again and will be flowering with lovely white flowers come the spring. This is the geranium, the Roseanne. I'll just leave this as it is, but in fact I might split this next spring. Here's the little mop-head hydrangea. I said in another video that I would move it, but I haven't done yet, so I'll wait until the spring and I'll put it in one of the azalea beds. It's just showing a deficiency of nutrients there with the yellowing of the leaves, so I'll sort that out next spring. The Magnolia stellata flowers really early in the spring, and it has also got its buds ready. Now here we are. Here's some lichen. Some people don't like lichen on their plants. They're alarmed by it, but in actual fact it's a sign of clear, clean air. Now, as you can hear, there's traffic going by here in the road. It's not a busy road, but there is plenty of traffic. And so I've got lots of shrubs here which will dissipate the noise and any pollution. Oh, and here is part of the rambling rose from way back there, and it's going to flower on these stems next year. The Amelanchier, being deciduous, has lost all its leaves now. Oh, and here's some more lichen. Just look at that pretty yellow lichen. Next to the Magnolia stellata, we have a large rhododendron and self-seeded hellebores on the ground underneath. There's hellebores and geraniums. Oh yes, and behind I planted a large viburnum. Again, because it's against the road, look how large and thick this viburnum is. The second large rhododendron. It's got plenty of buds again for next year. I'm pleased with that. And I can see a self-seeded, I think this is a Cotoneaster. Now what I might do is dig it up and put it somewhere else. Looking at these leaves, they do look like a Cotoneaster. Always nice to see self-seeded plants. Check out what they are, see if you want to keep them, see if you want to get rid of them. The Pieris is there. The large Crimson King maple and the twisted hazel. Just getting its catkins ready for spring. Some of the leaves have turned a nice yellow. Yeah, it's quite an interesting plant, this. I quite like it. The nice and bushy Pittosporum. Doing its job. I just wanted it to fill in the area here. The Photinia red robin, I want to look after this more this coming year and prune it back more regularly so you get the nice red leaves more often. Sedums, of course, are over now. One of the later plants to flower in the autumn for the last of the bees and the butterflies. So I will leave this now right the way through the autumn. In fact, I'm leaving most of everything through the autumn. The deciduous azalea, buds ready for next year. Spectacular colours. And the evergreen azaleas in front. There's the Cotoneaster horizontalis, this self-seeded. Pretty little red leaves. This particular one didn't get so many berries for some reason. Little lilac in the background, lost all its leaves. In the foreground then, of course, we have another deciduous azalea. The rest of the evergreen azaleas. I have actually taken away the dead and spent stems of the peonies. They would just collapse on the ground. The leaves have all been blown away to the back there. These particular leaves in the front garden have lots of them. Lots fall down from the beech hedge, and then later on in the winter I'll be getting some mulch, some bark chippings to put down on these beds. Here is the Philadelphus that I cut right back last year because I hadn't looked after it properly. I hadn't been maintaining it and taking a third of the stems out, and it was old and gnarled, and when I started to prune it, some of the stems just fell out of the ground dead. The nice mophead hydrangea, macrophylla. That is pink and blue. Now let's just see if we can see any buds already here for next year. What have we got? Anything down here? No, not much yet. I will leave this shrub exactly as it is right the way through the winter, and then in the spring I will deadhead it and give it a little prune. When we can see what new buds there are and what new buds are forming. The potentilla did its job this year with its lovely yellow flowers. I'll prune it back in the spring. I need to read up exactly what you do with these potentillas, as I'm not sure. The Wine and Roses Weigela, I pruned it back after it had flowered. And then behind there's a Viburnum tinus, just starting to flower. These flower in the autumn and winter. It's a good shrub because it gives body to the garden in the winter and it flowers. In fact, I've got a really big viburnum at the side of the house. I'll show you in the spring. There's a great big clematis grows right over it. So these are great shrubs for growing clematises, for giving body to the garden. They're evergreen and they flower in the winter when not much is flowering. Next to the viburnum is the Forsythia, one of the first plants to flower in the spring with its little yellow flowers. I just put in a flowering currant here, just to fill in the border. And another candy tuft, and it's wanting to flower. Come on, candy tuft, you can do it. A little bit of flowering in the winter. Another deciduous azalea. This one has these gorgeous peach colours. Not many leaves left, but they were nice as well this year in the autumn. Oh, and next to it, another self-seeded Cotoneaster horizontalis. Pretty with its red leaves. Now, I've got a buddleia here. Now, I'll confess I planted that. It's got white flowers. So I've got buddleias in all colours, not really in the right place, and I haven't cut it back yet. The buddleia next to it is a large buddleia, and I have cut that back. You can cut the buddleias back whenever you like. Probably best to do it a little bit earlier than later so they don't self-seed round the garden. They're really tough, you can cut them back as far as you like. And in front of that buddleia is another Macrophylla hydrangea mophead. This is a white one. And here's a little penstemon flower. I'm going to cut this penstemon right back in the spring. Let's see if I can rejuvenate it. It used to be great, but it's very old and I've neglected it. So let's see if I can really rejuvenate it and get it to produce lots of nice flowers, because in actual fact these flowers are produced all through the summer and right up until, as you can see now. So it's a pity I haven't looked after it better. Always next year. That's the thing about gardening. There is always next year. This is quite nice, really. This came with the house. See how it's got some nice yellow tinges to it? I like that. It was only about this high, maybe about 4 feet high 15 years ago. Let's just move up to the side of the garden here, past the choicea. Oh, look at those lovely yellow colours. It's bright, keeps the garden nice and bright, keeps its leaves all through the winter. And here we have the azalea bed, looking really healthy. Look at that. These azaleas have been here for 20 years. They actually flower at different times. Now, if I remember rightly, this is the first one to flower. Then this one, look at all the buds. And then this is a white one. It's like a white avalanche. It's like an avalanche of snow. Gorgeous. Let's have a little look at the 2 azaleas I planted a few months ago. Let's see how they do. It's going to be exciting coming this spring to see what they look like. Now, I popped this lavender here, totally in the wrong place, but I had to put it somewhere. I have so many lavender, as you know, from all those seedlings that the path produces. I've left it. It's got a little bit leggy. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do with this one. I'm going to cut it right back in the spring. Too late now. I just left it. Most of my others I did cut back, and this one I'm going to cut right back to within about 2 inches. And we'll see what happens with that next year. You know how they all say don't cut lavender back, right back into the old growth? Well, that's exactly what I do. And you'll see the results. What have we got next to it here? We've got the gooseberries, some rosemary, leeks, and the cabbages. Do you remember the cabbages earlier on in the year that had been totally eaten by the wood pigeons twice? Well, got cabbages out of them in the end. And these leeks will be pulled during the winter as and when. They can just sit there till we're ready. Here's the azalea and hydrangea bed. So this is the azalea that I took out of a pot last year, growing nicely. Some growth from the base, quite slow, but it's coming along. Another azalea I put in earlier in the year, the rhododendron, which looks okay. This flowers nicely. Another macrophylla mophead. Oh, look at that lovely leaf colour. The dwarf, or supposedly dwarf, rhododendrons at the back here. And the hydrangea paniculata. I did an experiment with this paniculata this year. I don't know whether you remember. I took all the blooms off after they were past their best to see if I could get a second flush of blooms. I didn't. So that was a shame for this year, but I've learnt, and that's what gardening is all about. Experiment. There's always next year. I made a mess of this year. So these were the blooms that came after I'd taken all the new ones off. These then appeared. So that is what they will look like. And indeed, next year, I will leave all the blooms on here, as I know I can't get a second flush. It's just started raining, so I'm going to go in, have a cup of coffee, and I'll see you in a few minutes. I've just had a nice coffee. The sun's back out now, so let's have a look at the beech hedge. It is actually deciduous, but a lot of these leaves will stay on over the winter. In fact, I've just noticed below the hedge here, there are some bluebells coming up. If you want a nice thick hedge, look how thick the base of that is. This hedge has been here donkey's years. So the person who planted this hedge, oh, we've got a little bit of ivy there. The person who planted this hedge has done it about a foot apart or less for a nice thick beech hedge. Let's just have a little walk down the side of the hedge here. Yes, I quite recommend a beech hedge if you're wanting a nice thick hedge. The beauty of beech is it'll grow as high as you want. In fact, one year I left one of these beech trunks to grow up and each one would grow a tree. Very pretty in the late spring as the new fresh growth is coming through. You only have to trim it once a year in early August. I leave all the leaves that drop around the hedge for the winter. The hedgehogs like to walk along here and forage under the hedge here. Nice fat little hedgehogs, hopefully they're fast asleep, but really it hasn't been cold enough, so they're probably not. Oh, the sun's really, oh, it's raining and the sun is out. I don't know whether you can see the rain there. Look at the rain. Raining and sunny. That's England for you. Doesn't know what to do. Luckily this camera is waterproof. It's a GoPro 9 and it's waterproof. So I'm going to carry on and see how we do. It should just be a little shower. Actually, as it started to rain, let's pop in the house. I've got something to show you. First of all, we've got the Aeonium in the porch here. Aeonium Schwarzkopf. I've got two of them outside in the garden that I left over winter. It's a bit risky in my climate to leave it over winter, but it actually survived. I've got another sedum here. I'll check on the name of this. But I planted this, it was from a friend, and all I did was take a leaf off and pop the leaf in some compost. Another one of those sedums. And here we have one of my lavender that I cut right back. It was an old leggy lavender and I just cut it right back to an inch off the soil. I've popped it in the porch just at the moment because it was raining last week and I just don't want it to get too wet, as I don't know what kind of soil is in here actually. So let's go and see what indoor plant I've got here. Now, I learned something in this last few days. In Britain, we simply call these Christmas cacti. However, I have just learned that there are 3 varieties, and the one with the serrated edges to the leaves, as we can see here, is in fact a Thanksgiving cactus. The Christmas cactus has smooth edges to its leaves.
These are not true cacti, but epiphytes, which means they live on other plants. They do not steal the nutrients from these plants and therefore are not parasitic. I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of the front garden in November. Thanks for watching. Please give the video a like, and then I'll see you next time in Paul T's World. Bye!